little bit of get ready with me and story time. So buckle in. We're gonna go through some what was it type of stories. And I'm gonna also talk about what I'm using today. Just because I haven't done a get ready with me in ages. Mostly it would be on Instagram Live and Facebook Live, but right now let's do it here. So without further ado, gonna start in. Gonna use there you go, the Sephora Overnight Hydration Mask. And I know what you're saying, so overnight hydration mask, what are you doing? This is actually my favorite primer. I am a dry, dehydrated skin type, like various little friends hanging around, more mature skin as well, and I'm all about ingredients. So when I was checking out some stuff on this bottle here, because it was a new product that was released, I said, oh, well, that's just polyglutamic acid, hyaluronic acid, and jojoba. Like, this is good for the skin. This is amazing. I'm going to use this as a primer because that's kind of like the ingredients I look for in a primer. Plus, it's $20. So, yeah, I bought it. I'm going to be using this as my primer because I already did it in my skincare routine. It's on TikTok if you want to see it. But anyways, let's get into it. I'm gonna go the Beauty Blender Bounce Skin Tint. This is shade 3. So have you guys ever had one of those encounters while driving or walking and you see something and you're like, that's not an animal, what is that? That's not a person. And it just kind of throws you off. Or it could be an animal that's totally out of place for that region. Always put on a palette for myself. Well, it actually happened not only to myself and friends, but to family members. So one of the first things I've noticed when I moved out in the country, or from the country to the city, I should say, was how close my neighbors were. So where I grew up, your neighbors were pretty much another house in between, if that makes sense, like the distance, I should say. For some of my friends, that was a further distance, maybe 2 houses, maybe 4. Maybe they were the only house on the street, that kind of thing. We were pretty much, as they called it, boony kids, out in the boonies. So yeah. I'm just always checking my complexion. I don't like to use a full coverage. Not always. It's always weird kind of doing it on camera to make sure everything's kind of reversed. So yeah, there was always those moments as kids, especially, you know, you mistake something like a coyote for a wolf. Oh, you know, so-and-so saw a wolf the other day. No, wolves don't come this far south. That's, you know, that's a northern Ontario thing, not a southern Ontario thing. But there are pockets of wolves. Just like to cover extra pigmentation up in there. I got some friends coming in, you know how it goes. So the first story I have is the Binbrook Bear. One of my friends, when she was younger, taking the bus to elementary school, they would have to get up pretty early, myself included. We always got up around, I guess it was around 5 o'clock in the morning. Got ready for school to make it there for, was it like 8? Oh, it feels like ages ago, but for around 8 o'clock, you know, and they'd have to go through this kind of route to get to the other kids. And when I'm talking country blocks, it's not like a city block. This is like you're on the bus for like sometimes an hour. I'm going with the Maybelline. I like this one. So yeah, you're on the bus for sometimes an hour, and you know, what are you gonna do but look outside the windows? And you know, this was the day before cell phones. Okay, like, yeah, you could have gotten your parents to let you take your Game Boy to school, because that was the only thing, or a Walkman, but you'd still be looking out the window for the most part. My friend was on her bus going to school, and it was on the country, like I said, and I've mentioned before. You know, you get things like coyotes, deer, nothing too big. There was reports of a cougar, and we'll get into that in a bit. So yeah, she was basically going to school, and she saw in the field, I believe she said it was a mama bear and a baby bear. And seeing a bear this far south was pretty unusual. And she was listening to her Walkman at the time, I believe, as it goes. And she kind of like looked around to see if anybody else on the bus saw what she saw. This like mama bear. It was just a black bear, so they weren't like grizzlies or anything like that. So there was only one other kid that saw the bear, and they had this like moment of looking at each other in the eye, like, did you see what I saw? But they didn't really, like, they didn't speak it out loud. They were just like, you saw that? I saw that. So it was one of those things that I think the fellow mentioned it when they got to school, that he saw a bear, and so did she, and he was being made fun of, so she kind of, no, I didn't see anything kind of thing, you know, when you're kids, it's social situations like that are tricky to navigate. But she still maintains that she's seen a bear. And now I have heard incidences. When I lived in Scarborough, there was a situation where a black bear was literally across the road from our like subdivision. I woke up one morning, go to work, and noticed all the streets were blocked off and police, and I was like, ooh, what's going on? I hope it's nothing too serious. And no, it was, apparently it was a black bear just kind of roaming around, which was pretty far south, but Hamilton's even farther south than that. So that's pretty cool. And, you know, there's been reports of animals catching a ride on the train tracks, and Hamilton has a big steel mill, Dofasco, and my father used to work there, so he always said, yeah, like sometimes you open up the shipment doors and the guys would see like maybe like a fox or a coyote curled up sleeping. He goes, once a deer ran out. I don't know if he was just fooling with me or not. I'm just loading up a powder puff here with some little bit of powder. I only set the center of my face. I don't like a ton of powder. And just put it in there like that, like a taco. So now the cougar thing that I referenced before, there was a time, I must have been in the 7th grade. It was the 90s. It was the 90s. That guy on TikTok makes me laugh. So yeah, it was the 90s. And there was reports all around Hamilton and Stoney Creek of a cougar or a big cat. And you know, like that's a big popular mythos with the cryptid world, is big cat sightings. Especially with the UK, there's a lot of big cats, and now like the general consensus is Are they escaped pets? Nobody really knows. But yeah, there was cougar sightings in Hamilton for the whole summer, and it got to the point where tons of people reported it, to the point that I remember going to summer camp, and my mom would listen to the news while we were getting ready, and it was on the radio, and there was like a cougar watch type of thing, and it would be like, oh, there's been a report of somebody seeing a cougar in their backyard. I don't know if it was like a hysteria thing, but I did end up seeing something. It could have been a cougar or a huge cat, but it was definitely in the cougar size vicinity. So it was nighttime, and I remember being at the neighbor's house and kind of looking out the window, and at the time I would go there after school, kind of like a babysitting, but not quite. I wasn't quite old enough to kind of stay on my own. So I was looking outside the window, and my mom was talking to the neighbor and picking me up and stuff, and I'm like, what's that? There was this big body, this cat body, walking in the ditch, and it was enormous. Like, I have barn cats and they can get pretty big, but this was a very big cat, bigger than anything I've seen outside of a zoo setting. So seeing this thing just kind of slink, not across the road, but across on the ditch, and I remember bringing it to the attention of the neighbor, and at the time her husband, he got like it wasn't a shotgun, but it wasn't a BB gun. I'm not sure what it was. It was like in between a shotgun and a BB gun. If somebody could kind of like gun savvy could tell me what it could have been. So he goes out there, because he saw it too, but it ended up going across the field. So that was pretty freaky. Like, to this day, I'm convinced it was a cougar that probably got on the train from up north to probably the steel mills, got off because it woke up and was like, wow, where am I? And probably headed through the forest up to the mountain of Hamilton, following the more greenbelt area. Probably like, I just need to get the heck out of people zone. So yeah, it was definitely, and I've seen a cougar in the wild since, on a trip coming in from America, like coming back across the border. And yeah, it looked exactly the same, and it was many years later, and I said, you know what, that was definitely what I saw. So, big cat sighting, mystery big cat. Definitely had one of those. The next step, I'm gonna start to bronze a bit. It's always harder to see. Let me see if I have my little mirror here. It's always harder to see the contour and bronze, and I always don't want to end up looking, kind of crazy, like somebody's, that lady from Something About Mary. I don't want to look like some crazy Magda kind of thing. So the next thing I always like to talk about is seeing, I guess the internet calls them so many different things, it's from creepypastas and whatnot, but rakes, flesh gates, flesh walkers, kind of those things, those who shall not be named, those type of things. Now, I'm part of the group that will say skinwalkers are pretty localized. Like, I feel like they are a mythos from a culture that is in Nevada, the South. So I would say that they're localized for that area. I'm not going to call everything a skinwalker, because I don't think I have the jurisdiction to say that. So for this story, I'm just going to call it maybe a flesh gate would be good. There's also the rake, the story of the rake, but that's like a creepypasta, and that always throws me into this like make-believe zone of things. It's always hard to work with I like the effect that mineral powders give, but it is kind of harder to work with. Yeah, it's one of those things where you have to really keep buffing. So yeah, this was actually a family member, and it's around where I grew up. Again, this place, I can guarantee it's not a strange portal to some sort of creepy world, okay? Like, yeah, we had a couple of incidences of weird things happen, but I can promise you it was pretty uneventful and normal. So, as I go into the story about the flesh walker, the flesh gate, great, right? So yeah, my family member, they were going to work on a very early shift. That was probably around 4:30 to 5 in the morning. And they have to pass by, oh, this is my little palette, by the way. I have a lot of depotted things here. I'm going in with a soft gray contour color. Pop it right under the bronzer just to amplify. It's always harder to see, especially with the brighter lights here. I got my studio lights. Kind of makes a little bit more, in real life it will look more heavy when I do makeup for specifically filming. It's always like a little bit more heavy-handed or defined. But like I was saying, the family member, they were heading to work 4:35 in the morning, early shift, 12-hour shift, so it's going to be a long shift. They've been already up for a little bit, and they were driving by this area that has a cemetery. Now this cemetery, growing up, it always kind of freaked me out. It just looked, it's just like so old. It was one of those things that, you know, local kids kind of are like, it's too old. it's a, you know, your imaginations run wild. And I was definitely not a fan of it because it was just a creepy place. It was near where I went to Girl Guides, and unfortunately they always had like these classes like tombstone rubbings and stuff, and I always thought that was like really like, ew, I don't want to do that. I want to stand on somebody's grave and make some weird artwork. I mean, what if they don't want some like somebody's random kid just from the 90s, you know, 100 years later, standing on their grave and just rubbing a crayon across paper for some sort of Girl Guides arts and crafts, like, you know. But anyway, that was the place where they were driving by, and they said they looked in the rear view mirror because something caught their eye, and they kind of slowed down, and there was a man kind of like running through the cemetery, which, okay, if people are jogging, but this man sped up towards her car like he was running, and she kind of was like, she slowed down at this point to almost a crawl, and she's like, what is going on? And this man just full out starts sprinting, and it wasn't, they said it wasn't really a man. It looked like a man, but it was like longer, elongated, longer limbs, that kind of thing. So they just gunned it as anybody would and should. for a moment, they said this creature, this Fleshgate type of man, was just grinning at her. Just grinning. This big smile. And it looked like he was, or it was, whatever, was laughing. And still running. She goes, it almost kept up with my car. And she didn't want to break the speed limit because down the road there was a little bit of like, there's always been a known one of those speed traps, you know, just in case if your car goes too fast, they can catch your license plate on a camera and, you know, you have to pay a needless ticket because you're being dumb. So she was just freaking out, and this guy was almost closing in on the back of her car, running on all fours. And she goes, to this day, I can't get him laughing out of my mind. So I remember hearing that story, and the hair on the back of my neck stood up. Because what the hell? What was that? Was this somebody who was like maybe on some sort of candy? Or, you know what I mean? Maybe they were partying too hard and they thought they were like superhuman, or maybe it was something else. I don't really think we have any of those legends around our area growing up. It's not really like, there's nothing special about it kind of thing. It's not like, oh, this, like, there was this legend of this place. No, it wasn't one of those places. It was just, so like, I am always flabbergasted about these kind of things, because why did it happen at a place that has no connection to anything weird, paranormal, cryptids, or anything like that? But it is unusual. I personally think it could have been somebody who was not all there for the time being. Maybe took too much of candy, like I said. But yeah, I don't know, have any of you guys ever experienced anything weird, like a big cat, one of the mysterious big cats, or even seeing something out of place that, hey, that shouldn't be here? I've since moved to the other side of the lake, basically. So in the area I am, I've seen regular coyotes. There are big wild turkeys, raccoons, possums. There's been a moose sighting the summer before I moved, which was pretty cool. There's lots of deer. A neighborhood over actually has regular black bears. So for us, black bears would be not out of the ordinary, because we're not too far from, I guess, up north. I'm closer going, I would say, closer to the up north, the cottage country, than I am to go to Hamilton now. So yeah, we would have black bears. There's a pocket of wolves that live by the lake, apparently, or they're kind of like half coyote, half wolf, coy wolves. So yeah, there's, this is an appropriate area for that type of wildlife. But what I'm talking about is if you've seen something that was like, hey, this doesn't belong here, or if you've had experiences with that, I'd love to hear you in the comments below. Tell me what you saw and like what the story was, because it's always something fascinating. Like, it could have been just a circumstance of, like I said, something got on a train or maybe the back of a transport truck or a pickup truck, and then just kind of like woke up and it was like, oh, I'm not supposed to be here. And or sometimes they've even said the illegal exotic animal trade, unfortunately, still happens, and people having the big cats that shouldn't be pets as pets, and then when they get too big or it gets too expensive to feed them, they turn them loose into the, unfortunately, wilds. Who knows? Could be anything. So yeah, comments below. Tell me if you've seen anything weird, and I'd like to thank you for getting ready with me when we do the little story time. And then I hope to see you guys next time. I got so many little things I'd like to speak about, and it's gonna be a fun year, I think. Hopefully once the weather gets better, because it is freezing out, and I'd like to go on a little bit of adventures. I am starting to drive. My anxiety has actually held me back from fully driving for most of my life. So in the past year, I've actually taken a lot of steps to getting it under control. It feels so much better mentally, emotionally, etc. And I can drive. I can drive. I know that seems so simple, but when somebody has anxiety, even being a passenger can be not a fun experience. And I wasn't in a car accident, or I wasn't in any sort of danger that put me into that headspace. It was just anxiety. And sometimes that's what it is. And you know what? It's fine. There are ways to cope with it, or if you can't cope with it, there are various tools and medications and everything out there that can help you, because I was really happy to reach out. And you know, like this time of year, mental illness is like, it's hard, I guess, because the weather, it's gray, it's blah. You know, we don't have a lot of daylight, especially in Canada right now. So people do suffer from the seasonal depression and whatnot at this time of year. And it's like, you know what? It's not your fault. It happens. But I believe that actually getting help is not, it should never, ever, ever be something to be ashamed of. I admit I was slow to get help because I was scared of like what people would think. But looking back now, it's just like, it's just, I should have done it sooner. I'll just say I should have done it sooner. But now, like, I am excited because I can drive on my own. I am calm. I can drive on the highway. I can drive to places I've never been before. And one of my motivators was to film content and explore, and hopefully explore haunted places that are legally allowed to go to. Because I, as much as I like watching abandoned videos and whatnot, I am too chicken shit to even go there, and I don't want to get arrested. I don't want. The worst though would be like getting hurt and having nobody come see you or save you, or finding like a dead body or something. That would be like number one big nope for me. And you know what? Spiders. That's another big nope. Yeah. So here we are in 2023. I know I took a little bit of time off, but look, the holidays were a lot. It's tiring. It's a lot. It's okay to take time off. I mean, this is a hobby. I'm taking time off, whatever. So excited to be in the new year with y'all. And you know, I'm gonna say it again, but keep on creeping on. Till next time.